So, fear is a monster inside us which renders us weak. And usually, people, the way they deal with fear has to be re looked at. A lot of times, you may have heard these comments don't be fearful, be courageous, think positive. I think this comes from a very different understanding and perspective of fear. So, let's understand fear. What is fear? Where does it come from? Fear is not about the future. Fear comes from the failure of the past. Now, let me give you an example. In one of my workshops, I met one participant and he was not smiling, very serious. So, in the break, I became curious and I started inquiring. And what he said was 5 years ago, I used to work as a technician and then I failed on one job. And from that point onwards, my hands shake. I cannot do the technical job anymore. So I said, what exactly happens when you think of that event? He says, I can hear my boss saying something to me in strong volume, and I can hear my own internal dialogue, what I said to myself that time, that I'm no good, I'm a failure, everybody has laughed at me, I don't know if I'll be able to do this again. So that event, essentially what he's doing is he's replaying in his mind in the form of thoughts, and because he is reliving that event so strongly, he's getting an emotion in his body. Okay, so how do you deal with fear? Again, when we are thinking these thoughts which come from the past, which is the origination of fear, we almost are locked up with our thoughts. Now, when we get locked up with our thoughts, what do? We try to change them, correct? But here's something that I wanted to think about. In a day, roughly about we have 40,000 thoughts. How many times will you replace the negative and replace it with positive? It's not possible, right? It's like it's a huge tidal wave and you're fighting that with a small water gun. Who's going to win? The tidal wave. And that's when we are drained out of our thinking. And then the result that we want to achieve, which is courage and optimism, is far, far away from where we are. So here's what you can do. One, please understand fear is never about the future. It is the perception, it is the inference that we have drawn from the past failure. Okay? And because of that, our thoughts and the content of thoughts is negative. And because we don't understand our thinking very well, we think that every single thought that flows through us, I belong to that thought. I possess that thought. And that's why I say we get locked up with those thoughts. So now what you can do. First thing, when you have thoughts which are emanating from your past, the failure of the past, take a pause and just watch your thinking. Again, it will gravitate in the same manner. I'm no good. I should not do that. What if I fail again? Because it has happened in the past, most likely it will also happen in the future, and all of this. Then you will understand that you are assuming certain things basis of what? Basis of what happened in the past, and you're leading that assumption into the future, which has not yet arrived. And therefore, you have to just do is watch these thoughts come and go by. Do not feed them with more thinking. And it is possible to do that. It is possible to witness our own thinking because we have multiple levels of awareness. So we can be aware of our own thinking. The moment you bring in this awareness, which I called as refined or filtered awareness, slowly you will see that these thoughts have lesser grip on you. Okay, that's one. The second thing that you have to do is fear is an assumption. And where is this assumption coming from? From the past, which means it is not a yardstick to measure my future, because with our effort, we can change the future. Therefore, look at this as an assumption. It is not a reality. And how do you look at it as an assumption? Again, by the quality of witnessing. And what happens with fear also is that our body goes through those events again, which we don't realize. We're trying to solve this fear only from the mind by trying to deal with the thoughts. But what happens to the emotions? Where do you experience fear? You experience that in the body. How? For me, it is churning in my stomach. It is the change in my breathing. It is the rise in my body tension and temperature. What about dealing with this? So whenever this fear comes up, just again drop your attention within. Watch all these sensations arise. They will arise like a tornado. But if you don't suppress them, if you don't try to avoid them and don't distract yourself, but just allow your body to react and hold that space for yourself, you will see eventually these sensations subside and the storm which had risen cools down. And these are what I call as momentary upheavals of consciousness. And we can deal with these momentary upheavals of consciousness again by high level of awareness. And therefore, folks, it is very important for all of us that we submit ourselves to a mental training practice every day to understand our mind, body, and emotions, because they function as an integrated whole. They are not separate. One affects another. And hence, I suggest very strongly that we must spend at least a few minutes during the day training our mind so that when the rubber meets the road, we know what to do and how to handle the mind. And make sure we stay away from this propensity of indulgence and consumption just to distract ourselves, because that's not going to help us to overcome fear. Finally, I would like to say is that do not design your future based on your past. We are blessed with the ability, the consciousness to redesign our future. Thank you.